Have you been following Sophie Cunningham and what's happened? I know you're a big sports fan, the WNBA. She's been targeted, elbowed for her beliefs. I mean, she basically believes girls' sports should be protected. I was a college athlete, and this is an issue near and dear to my heart and so many women across the country.
Yeah, of course.
Your reaction to what's happened to her?
I just think, look, sometimes when you're courageous in this country, some of the worst people in the world try to attack you. What I would tell Sophie and anybody else is keep speaking your mind. You actually are inspiring a dozen people for every person that criticizes you. And we cannot take our country back. We cannot save the United States of America unless you have people of...
Sophie Cunningham said exactly what millions of fans had already been arguing about. Then J.D. Vance entered the conversation with a megaphone instead of a fire extinguisher, and suddenly the basketball drama felt more like a family Thanksgiving dinner where someone casually brings up politics. The backlash was intense, the applause was loud, and the reaction spread everywhere. But the wildest part, that was only the beginning of what happened next.
Look at your screen. A French trans player says if the WNBA gives them a chance to play in the league, they would not turn down an offer. I'd like to now go to my co-anchor for the day who actually played women's basketball.
A major cultural rift has erupted within the WNBA following comments by Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham opposing the inclusion of biological male athletes who identify as, quote, transgender.
Somewhere in a small Missouri gym, a young girl who grew up battling her older brothers on a driveway basketball who probably never imagined that one day the vice president of the United States would appear on national television to publicly defend her. Yet somehow, that unlikely moment became part of her story, and a simple
came out of Seattle, and where Storm minority owner Celeste Keaton was suspended 5 home games after confronting 2 teenage fans during a game. The girls were holding signs supporting Sophie Cunningham following her comments about transgender participation in women's sports, and the WNBA ruled that the interaction violated its fan code of conduct, the Storm issuing an apology for the incident afterwards. Sophie, without sort of revisiting the actual issue that brought us to this point, I would just love if to get your thoughts on the league's discipline of an owner over a fan interaction.
Yeah, I think I have a very clear...
Yet that is precisely where Sophie Cunningham found herself this week. What makes the situation even more unusual is that so much of the discussion has had little to do with basketball itself. Throughout her career, Cunningham has earned her reputation the hard way, with relentless hustle, physical play, and a willingness to battle for every possession in a league where skill, speed, and finesse often take center stage.
The point here is not that this is demeaning to women's sports. It's that the only reason women's sports exist is because men don't play them. Because otherwise you would have a unisex league and no women would be able to play. So when I get attacked like this, by the way, there's a couple of other funny clips. Did you see the clip of the French woman? Producer Ali, I'm going to give you one of the
We got to be clear here. The Frenchman. It's a Frenchman. It's a French dude. Okay?
That is a bad bitch if I've ever seen one on
The argument here isn't that women's sports are somehow being diminished. The point being made is that women's leagues exist as separate competitions because men and women compete in different divisions. That distinction quickly became part of a much broader debate, especially as more clips and reactions began circulating online. One particular clip involving a French player drew plenty of attention, with commentators debating exactly what happened on the basketball court and why the moment sparked such a strong reaction.
I want to ask you a specific question, because the one thing you didn't mention in the things that would be easy to just say no to, right, or agree with, in this big Sophie Cunningham story, for example, she writes a ESPN feature saying she doesn't agree with allowing transgender girls and women to compete in women's sport, and all hell breaks loose with this, and I don't understand why. And perhaps you can explain to me what is wrong with what she said. Because she
was never the player fans circled on the schedule because of huge scoring numbers. Her role was more about doing the gritty work that doesn't always show up in the box score. Fans knew her as the teammate who brought toughness, energy, and physicality, and if you went after one of her teammates, you could expect Cunningham to stand up for them. Nothing highlighted Cunningham's reputation more than a game in June last year, when a missed call involving Caitlin Clark sparked a heated moment on the court. Cunningham immediately stepped in, and the footage quickly spread across social media, turning a role player into one of the league's most talked about personalities almost overnight. The moment gave her a reputation built as much on toughness and loyalty as on her basketball skills. Her growing profile eventually became part of a much bigger online conversation. Around the same time, the nickname Magar Barbie, which had followed her since college, began appearing everywhere again as her popularity grew alongside Clark's. Cunningham has pushed back on assumptions people make about her based on the nickname, her background, or her appearance, saying those assumptions don't necessarily reflect how she sees herself. For a while, the controversy remained secondary to basketball, but that changed when an ESPN profile recently asked Cunningham directly about the nickname, and her answer sent the conversation in an entirely new direction.